Sounds great.
It's been a very long time since anyone's been in our shop space, so I forget how echoey it is until I actually am trying to talk to a group of people, and I'm like, I don't know, can anyone hear me? So great. Well, welcome. This is actually really generous and kind of kind from my perspective, simply because we do have a shop space and it hasn't been open to the public for almost probably 4 times as long as it ever was open. So we were only open at our North Street location for about 3 months before shutting down for COVID. So it's been kind of a very sad realization of a dream, but I think we're all kind of in that in some way, and we're all looking forward to a time in which we can go out and be in each other's spaces again and enjoy sharing food again and everything. And so this is neat to be able to do this in a virtual sort of setting in the meantime. So thank you so much. I'm very interested in in questions at the end as to what people have about coffee, but I did prepare, a little bit talking points about how I started elementary and what it is, and then a lot about what coffee is, which is, like most things, once you start to get into it, is way more complex than you'll ever realize. Maybe you already all know this, but there's a lot to coffee before it gets to the point that we can brew and prepare it here at the shop. And then at the end, we can make an espresso martini, which is awesome. Though I can't serve it to all of you, which is very, very sad.
And so, I did pass off that outline as well as the recipe ahead of time. So we are certainly able to have gathered all the ingredients and follow along with you, at least.
Great. Perfect. And I'm sure everybody has a different take on it too. So very interested to know if anyone has their own recipe that they love. So that'll be fun. But so first, a little bit about elementary. Every time I speak on it, it gives me a good time for reflection as to why did I start the business? What was the main motives behind it? And I started elementary coffee in 2014 at the Broad Street Market, which here in Harrisburg. Has everyone been to the Broad Street Market? It's a lovely, amazing place. And I started when I was 26 years old, which looking back is way too young. But I had no idea what I was getting into. And I think based on this organization, and understand the power of meeting over food and meeting over beverages, and the beauty of what can develop because of just this shared action together. I think that's something that we're all really missing with COVID right now, is the inability to be able to connect over a cup of coffee. So for me, I really love craft coffee. I had worked at another coffee shop locally, and I'd really wanted to take my skills a lot further. And the only way to do that around here seemed to be opening my own place. However, I was very hesitant about the degree in which coffee can get pretentious. You never want to have to walk in a space and feel like you have to be wearing the right clothes or be carrying the right pretentious book under your arm when you just all want to enjoy coffee together, right? So the Broad Street Market, which is, I think, arguably the one meeting place of the whole city, it's hugely important to getting people together that maybe wouldn't stand side by side, even at the grocery store, just because of where they choose to buy their groceries. The Broad Street Market is hugely important, I think, in bringing people together. So opening up there to try to really just meet people, and if they wanted coffee, great. If they didn't want coffee, cool, we could still have a relationship, was the goal. So we opened up there, and it's been 6.5 years. And I still, when I think back, have kind of the same feeling towards coffee and what it can do and the power, if not more so, than I did when I opened up the business. So I'm sure, does everybody like coffee that's watching this right now? Is that why you're all here? I hope so. But I think we all have, one thing I would love to do is write down people's coffee stories, because I think coffee, more than a lot of even beverages, I guess, let alone foods, is very poignant. It has a lot of, obviously, stimulating properties, which are great and awesome, but it's also delicious. It can be prepared a bunch of different ways, as you all probably really know. You can use it in more than just drinks. You can, rub it on a piece of meat. It's pretty awesome as a item and as something to be shared and enjoyed by everybody. And that really has the power to just connect people over just this kind of shared item. So yeah, that's a little bit, I guess, about elementary. I was gonna say our growth then for me, and again, looking back, I really always wanted to grow organically. So we really only expanded if we had the money and means to. So that means, I think, in the scheme of corporations and, money coming from investors, we have moved very slowly in the scheme of things. So I think a number of years ago, I started looking for an independent location. And the only reason for that is because I want to be able to take the ability for coffee to unite folks. I want to take that further than was the market space we were able to do there. So right before we shut down at our North Street location that we had opened, we were finally starting to host like sewing workshops, resume building workshops, book clubs, like these things that people just need a space for. And the market is a great space for so many things, but it's not an after hours space where people can just gather and sit and hang out. So we were starting to do that here, and that was really the intent of trying to find another location, is how can we continue to use this connection, this point of connecting a bunch of people from the community? How can we take this like a step further and start offering more for the community in a space that we're able to control a little bit more? So yeah, after a very, very long search around Harrisburg, because I don't know if anyone else has tried to find a location ever to open a place in Harrisburg, but it's kind of hard to find, particularly in the downtown location. We finally settled on a building. We didn't really want to, I guess, align ourselves with any sort of developers, so we found like just a local building that was finally owned by, actually the landlord lives right next door. I could see his house from here, and started a very slow building project in which we, we're trying to accumulate the funds to be able to expand to this location. So we finally did, and someday the full dreams will be realized here. But I think from my perspective, it's really interesting to watch other businesses and where they choose to go. For elementary, it's really, for me, I guess, it's really all about being organic. Like, what is the natural next step, and how can we deliberate on the subject for a while about where we want to move as a business, and does this feel good for everybody? Is this good for the entire, the crew and the team that I work with? And is this going to be good for the community at large? So I really hope our North Street location is good for the community. I like it. Right now it's a little bit weird because nobody else can come inside. But hopefully you all, if you haven't been here already, hopefully you all have the chance to come and visit, and yeah. But very interested in other people who've also had similar experiences about building a business, and particularly in Harrisburg, because I know I have a lot to learn. But this is how elementary's developed, and I feel like it has been as organic as possible in a way in a corporate world, in which is driven by bigger business. But if you run a small business, or small business owners, that as soon as you're able to give them a hug, do that, because everyone's definitely really struggling right now, including us. But March is coming, or is here, and the warm weather is coming, so there's hope ahead. And I hope COVID hasn't been too hard on absolutely everybody, so we're able to go out and actually celebrate some of this when it's over. Yeah, very interesting time to own a business.
Andrew, may I ask you a question here? You're not being open. Is that a choice, or is that based on the regulations of similar to bar service?
Oh, sure. That was a really good question. And I guess I should specify, we are open. I guess the interior of a building is not open. At both of our locations, we've had a walk-up service since July, I think is when we reopened. And that was because we are also, not only are we a coffee shop, but we also are predominantly catered towards queer people who have not been able to find jobs elsewhere. So we kind of have a more vulnerable population that works in the company that is more sensitive to possibly getting this disease. So we've been extremely, extremely cautious throughout. So at this point, it is a choice to not allow people inside, but it's really just for the protection of the team, who we just want them all to get through this. So there is a walk-up aspect. You can visit right now. You just have to, if you want to see inside, peer through the windows, and it's a little bit sad. And if you go to our market location, that's also out a window, which is really confusing because the market itself is actually open. And so you can walk past our stand, but then we make you go outside and then we serve you through the window. It's a little bit uncomfortable, but I think all I really know about small business is messaging, in keeping that consistency is really important. So the other thing I really wanted to do when setting up what we were going to do during COVID was I was like, as much as we don't have to change our rules over and over again and people know what to expect, even if it's not great, like just to be able to have that consistency is kind of where we've been. So when we shut down till July. Then when we reopened, it was in this capacity, and I thought it might fail in the middle of winter, but it didn't. We continued through the winter. People like huddled in the cold outside for our coffee, which is like extremely kind. And hopefully, I think as we're all hoping, we're through the worst now. But yeah. Are there more questions? I feel like, sorry, I'm like new to Zoom. Oh, great.
Yes, and I can filter you the questions. I apologize. One question was, have you done any coffee competitions?
Oh, fascinating. I really want to know if you've done any, Michael, any coffee competitions, because that's really interesting. An interesting question.
Only coffee drinking competition.
That's a good one. That's the only one you really want to do anyway, right? That's the best one. So I am not a competitor. So there's a whole side of coffee. If for those who may not know, there's an extremely competitive side of coffee. You can become the World Barista Championship, and it's a highly coveted position that is extremely difficult to obtain. It's like the athletics of coffee. And into that goes coffee preparation, coffee knowledge, your finesse when you're preparing, and like honestly how you look when you're doing it. It goes into your tapping technique, the coffees that you choose, and then you become like essentially represented in the world of coffee. You can get a job anywhere or start your own business if you get this title. But if you want to get really weird, there's also like individual competitions there's a roasting competition, there's AeroPress, which is a brew method competition. There's competitions for everything. I am not a competitor, so I don't really go. I participated in a couple latte art championships. So, you know, when you can, with the milk, draw on top of your latte. Those are like a huge, just kind of easygoing. Like you can set those up around shops around here. So I've done one with little lamps before, back in the day. You know, we have our little championship and draw pictures on the lattes. I've done that, but it's actually, I mean, that is a whole track in which people who are competitive, it's great for them. Like they're able to like, you meet people in the industry. It's really cool. Because we grow things organically, it has been harder for us to like find the means and financial aspect of like, you know, sponsoring people to like go to New York or Philly or wherever they're hosting these championships. But I've had a couple baristas who like really want to pursue that route, so we'll like support them. I am very bad at them. I don't like doing that stuff. That is not my thing. I'm more just like, hey, can we all just drink coffee and get along? You know? Ooh, sorry.
And you know, opening new buildings and more operations, right? Just
yeah, there's some other stuff filling my mind. You know,
yeah.
there's like other pursuits. Exactly. Exactly. But the championships, if you ever can't sleep some night, you want to look them up. They're ridiculous. They absolutely are. It gets so when I talk about the pretentious side of coffee, that was what I kind of didn't want to be, was just like so specific. Like we all drink coffee, and there is no right way to enjoy coffee, and that's the conclusion of it. Like we have our way of preparing coffee and serving it, but just because somebody wants to go and like have a different brew ratio, you know, with their water and their ground set up differently, like that's fine. If they enjoy it, that's cool. You know, it's not for us to be like, oh, you're enjoying your coffee wrong. You know, if you want milk and sugar, you want milk and sugar. That's cool. That's why we offer milk and sugar. So I think for us, you're just trying to be like, we all enjoy this beverage. We can prepare it in a certain way, and we try to like cater towards people who, you know, enjoy their coffee a bunch of different ways than me. I like drinking black coffee, but you know, that's just my thing. It's straight espresso. I don't know what's wrong with me, but it's like the sweetened stuff, not really my thing, but people also really love it. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at, but
Okay.
Yeah.
Renee had asked, what's your connection to Harrisburg? Why Harrisburg open?
Oh, I love that question. I wish to say that I grew up here, but I grew up in Shippensburg. I actually grew up on a dairy farm in Shippensburg, so my family's there. And I went to college near here, and so I ended up in Harrisburg 11 years ago and kind of fell in love. And I think the beauty of Harrisburg, which, I mean, I could go into this forever. This could be a whole different conversation. But I think the beauty, from my aspect, the beauty of Harrisburg is that if there's not something here, you can create it. It's a very like open city for like new ideas and potential. So I think like had I tried to open this business in any other city or just wanted to do my thing in the local market, I don't think it would have really worked out. I think because we were here and there wasn't anything like it in the same way, we were able to exist. If I had gone to New York City and tried to like open this up, no one would know who we are. I wouldn't have succeeded. But in Harrisburg, you know, I think when I moved here, a lot of people were like, oh yeah, nothing's going on in Harrisburg, which one, they were wrong because there's a lot going on. But two, like my thing now is I'm like, well, if there's nothing going on, then you can create it, make it happen. Like this is actually a place that, you know, it's not too expensive to get into these things. And the community is really, really supportive and, you know, is really wants to help each other out. And it's small enough that it feels like a small town. So Shippensburg was way too small of a town. So I you know, expanded a little bit to Harrisburg, a little bit larger. But yeah, but I'm not a Harrisburg native, so I don't have that under my belt. But I have been here for 11 years, so I'm starting to understand a little bit more about it. But yeah,
I think that was a great response. Thank you, definitely. And it's nice to hear a different perspective on it of how the possibilities are there. That's awesome, definitely.
I really think so. Yeah, I really think so.
The next comment was, and this is kind of where I was going at with, was that based on government regulations or your choice to stay closed? Because I did see, and I'm going to talk about a little later on, April 4th, restaurants now allowing bar service again and up to 75% capacity self-certify. So do you foresee in April anything different, or are you thinking still the outside,
Probably until I can guarantee, like for me, I think the highest risk is for my team and for the crews. So I think until we're all able to get vaccinated, which I don't know if there's like we might all be, like food producers might be eligible for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So because we have a roasting side, we might be able to like be eligible for a vaccine. So until I know my team is not going to get it, we probably will just continue this capacity. However, I was in the new Zero Day Brewing down the street today because they're going to be serving our coffee, and they're like fully ready to do the 75%. They're like, oh yeah, we're going to have bar service. You know, I think a lot of other places will, which is really, really great for them. But yeah, so we'll see. But I think April's so nice outside too. So hopefully we'll just be able to have, you know, the outdoor seating here and people, our outdoor space will be kind of get us through April and May until maybe the vaccine works, hopefully.
which is certainly respectable. And please don't look at it as I'm harping on it. I know it was just kind of a follow-up question on that.
It feels differently. And I think the important thing is not to judge others, because I think it's so pointing fingers right now, but everyone's doing what they need to do to survive. Like, I think, you know, it's interesting as a business owner to be like, oh, well, why are they doing that? Or that's too casual or whatever, or why are they being so strict there? And my thing is just like, I don't know, we just all got to stop judging one another, because I think people are making the choices as they need to for their own business or for their own community. So I try to, it's different wherever you go, for sure.
Well, the questions keep rolling in, so I'm going to keep rolling with them if you're good.
I love this. This is easy for me just talking at you forever anyway.
Okay. So a couple questions coming back from Renee. What's your favorite coffee and what drew you to coffee and to roasting?
Yeah. So my favorite coffee right now is probably a single origin that we carry from Costa Rica. It's a Costa Rican natural processed coffee, which is, we're getting through a really small importer. So I think one of the questions kind of earlier when I was developing this is like, how do you source coffee? And, you know, for us, because I try to make movements that are really intentional. I grew up on a farm. For me, it's a lot about how can we work directly with the farmers that are producing the beans. So we do not have the means to be our own importers. That's like a very huge process that's highly risky, but I only work with either direct trade importers that are representing directly their family's farm or very, very small importers. So I was actually right before this roasting with a really small importer called Village Coffee Imports, and they mostly specialize in Costa Rica and Peru coffee, and they have representatives that literally grew up on these farms in Costa Rica and Peru. So I'm able to talk to the farmers if I want to, or could go down and visit. again with the means and times that aren't COVID, and be able to take time off work, because that's a thing that's difficult too. But this Costa Rican coffee it's more unique because natural processed coffee, which simply means that which I guess we can get into. If we have time, we'll get into how coffee is grown or whatever. But coffee is a cherry. It's this beautiful, beautiful red cherry, and the pit inside of it is what we is what we roast. But the removal of the cherry itself, with which the mucilage on that is actually quite small. It's actually not like biting into like a sweet cherry from around here, where the pit's, I don't know, maybe 30% of the actual thing. When a coffee cherry, I don't know, the pit's like 80% of the actual cherry. So you have to remove that cherry somehow. Typically in Central American coffee growing regions, they wash it off. They use they have prevalent water, and they're able to wash off, go through this method to wash off this cherry. So that's known as wash processed coffee. But natural processed coffee, which actually is more predominant in areas that have lesser water. So a lot of African coffees will often be processed this way. It's called natural process, which means the cherry stays on and is kind of put into beds in which the sun can kind of come down, dry the cherry onto the pit, and then it's removed by hand instead of being in a washer processed coffee. But what you get in a natural processed coffee is a lot more berry notes and floral notes. People either love or hate it. I love floral notes and berry sweet notes in my coffee. I'm just like, oh yeah, give me all that sweetness without actually adding sugar. So I love that. But it's a little bit more rare for like a Costa Rican to have a natural processed coffee. So it's a really kind of cool mix, and that's probably my favorite coffee right now. And what drew me to roasting. So the next step in the process, again, we can't control, like I think this would be great if we could have like a Harrisburg like coffee farm, in Colombia or something, and we could all just go down there and produce. Like I would love to like be the producer of the coffee and also bring it up here, and because I love the farming aspect of it too. That's not feasible. Coffee doesn't grow around here. Obviously we can't have a farm in Colombia, but controlling the coffee from when I can really get my hands on it to where it ends up in the shop is hugely important, just to be able to make sure that I get all the flavors in the roasting process that I want. So yeah, maybe I'm a little bit of a control freak. I don't think so, but I really love the aspect of, because it is a valuable commodity, bringing it in and really just being able to perfect it to the degree that we want to, and then be able to kind of pass it out to the public and use it in our shop. Coffee roasting, which could also be another session. I was like kind of exploring, I was like, could I do a roasting thing? Wow, like on here, but it's kind of a mess. It's also really loud. But coffee roasting is I like to work with my hands, but I'm also like very creative. And I think it kind of takes a little bit of both. It's like a very functional process, but it also takes a lot of creativity to kind of like, it's like 50% of both. So it just keeps me interested. And I think the coffee roasting process is pretty beautiful. It's like making popcorn in a pan on your stove, except for way cooler. And all the smells and processes it goes through is really cool. It cracks like coffee. So there's a certain portion, anything after the first time it cracks, which is the water molecules vaporizing, anytime after that is what is good enough to drink, where it won't just taste like green coffee matter. Because prior to that, it's a green, we call it green beans, but yeah, they're green coffee pits essentially. And then, yeah. So we could do, if you have more roasting questions, I could also answer those too, but yeah.
I can think of several roasting questions, but I'll go flow through what was already posted here. What inspired you to open a coffee shop in Harrisburg?
Yeah, I think it was really, so for me, I felt like the current craft coffee shops, and I just didn't think they were quite reaching the full extent of the community that they could. I think that like coffee is a very highly prized commodity. It needs to be like represented in a good way in my mind if you're going to buy it from like really good sources. But I think you really need to like be able to offer it in a way that most of the public can interact with it and enjoy it without making it pretentious. And so I felt like that mark was not being made in Harrisburg at the time. I think it is. It definitely is now. We're only part of the big picture of the coffee scene in Harrisburg, and that's so cool. And I love just being able to be involved in it. But yeah, I felt at the time that there just needed to be, people could come to our stand and just be like, oh, I want a coffee. And it could be this Costa Rican natural that I could talk for half an hour on. But instead, I'm just like, yeah, you know, you just want a cup of coffee. I just want to here, have a cup of coffee, you know, like, yeah, I wanted to kind of try to be able to use it as a way to connect people and really have the means to have not only a representation of good coffee, but a way to connect folks in Harrisburg and support the queer community. Here we are.
What is the most popular flavor of coffee that you sell?
Oh, that's really interesting. That's a really good question. So it depends on what's going on. And it really depends. I mean, marketing is a big thing too. And I'm actually probably not really good at marketing either, because I'm just like, I don't know, this is cool. If people want to enjoy it, they want to enjoy it. And sometimes like I do notice, I'm like, oh, if we push something, people will buy this. This is marketing 101 that you all probably know. But so right now, I mean, we just released our seasonal coffees do really well is the conclusion. And all of our seasonal coffees have like a donation aspect tied to them. So we every bag we sell, we donate to some place. So right now we just released, actually, I wonder if there's a bag here to show you. We just released a blend called, oh yeah, there is, here we go. Here's our more recent blend, which is called Up Dog. It probably doesn't reverse it, so sorry, that's backwards. But it has a bunch of dogs on it. And our whole shtick was we want people to say, what's up, dog? And then we, that is our coffee. But anyway, and then, you know, our donation goes to the local humane society. So that one's selling really well right now. But actually probably our dark roast, which is our black rose, which is a blend of two different coffees. One is a direct trade coffee and the other one is also from a smaller importer. That one is on a slightly darker side, and that one honestly sells really well. Like dark roast, that robust, it's easier to brew at home. That robust flavor is probably our best seller. I definitely, that's what we just set up in 0 Day today. So for them they're opening this weekend. So I'm very excited about it. And you know, that's typically what I kind of ask, like when I go out for wholesalers and ask what they want to brew. We normally put a black rose on. So that's probably our all-time favorite seller. But
so are they using your coffee for one of their beers, or are they just offering your coffee as well?
I think both. So I'm not sure if they have, I think they're condensing, I'm not quite sure. They have used in the past our coffee for their one of their beers, and I think they're going to bring that back, but I don't think it's around right now. Not quite sure where their brewing site is, but yeah, they'll be serving our coffee in during their brunch hour and stuff. So they'll have our brewed coffee, and yeah, it's cool.
Last question, and then we'll let you get more to your thing. Sorry. Do you like to roast? Is there a school?
Yeah, so, okay, yes and no. Roasting, there is, I think, a track. Again, if you get really bored some night, you can look up the Specialty Coffee Association. It is an international association, and there's different educational tracks you can go on. So if you ever just felt like learning to barista, I think they have an online, you can learn, watch videos and learn a lot of the stuff, in online courses. It's very expensive. It's not very user-friendly for the average barista, so I've never actually known somebody to go through these courses. They also have a roasting kind of course that you can go that direction in, and I think they'll teach you a lot of just the technical aspects of it that you can learn without actually practicing it. But I think the major way to learn to roast is honestly to apprentice to roast. So find somebody who's doing it and work with them. But that's kind of a hard position to have. I finally just started teaching somebody here from our company for the first time, because it didn't make sense for me before. But it's a very long process, because if you want to be able to produce it right and not have people taste the difference between roasters, it's you kind of have to merge together and figure out and really teach somebody, have somebody work alongside of you for a long time to be able to learn what can happen, the potentials of what can happen in a roast. It's a very simple process. You can do it on your stove, on a pan on your stove top. If you ever feel like doing this, it'll smell up your house in not a great way, because it's really, really potent. So just be careful. But you can, get a cast iron skillet, and that's how, coffee was originally roasted, just over a fire in a pan. And you can continuously stir it. You can do it in your oven too. I think that's the other way people do it. You can do it with a heat gun, for peeling off paint. You can do that in a bucket and keep stirring that. There's a bunch of different ways you can roast coffee at home without getting fancy equipment. But if you want to be able to really control what you're doing and be able to kind of unlock different flavors as you go along the roasting process, you end up having to invest in a giant machine. Therefore, you know, it gets kind of more coveted and people are more protective about their machines and not messing it up. So, yeah.
How did you learn? Did I miss that? Did you?
So I actually ended up learning, no, I don't think I said that. So St. Thomas Coffee Roasters, is everyone familiar with them? They're towards Lingelstown. They're in Lingelstown. Not
Lingelstown Road, yeah.
Lingelstown Road, they're up there. They were the only coffee roaster in town. So when I really wanted to get into coffee and I didn't really know how. And I went in there one day and I was just like, it was after college. I didn't know what I was doing, you know. And I was just like, I went in there one day and ended up interviewing with them. And I was like, I really want to learn to roast coffee. And the owner was like, we'll see. He's like, I've only ever taught my son. And this is really normal because it's a really long process. You don't want to burn your building down. This is a thing you can do with a coffee roaster. You can, you know, set fires to things. So he was like, we'll see. And he ended up doing that. So I apprenticed to roast with him. It was really great because he was really easygoing. And so I was able to mess things up and he didn't care, which is also good because coffee's really expensive. You can't just like mess it up and like if it burns.
You froze there for a minute. I'm not sure if you can hear me or not. But it's a great look. Okay, well, while we're waiting to hopefully get her back, I know Chef Reese even put in the comments here